The dog refused to cross the hospital doorway. Not bark, not lunge. Just stand there in the pouring rain with his body rigid and his amber eyes locked on the darkness beyond the shattered glass, while water streamed from his fur and the old emergency lights inside flickered red across the floor like fresh blood. Captain Nolan Hayes had seen Rex charge through gunfire in Kandahar. He had watched that German shepherd leap into collapsing buildings without hesitation. But tonight, outside St. Mercy Veterans Hospital at 3:17 in the morning, Rex backed away from the entrance like something inside already knew his name. The storm rolled hard across northern Virginia, hammering the empty parking lot in silver sheets. Wind hissed through broken windows high above the abandoned hospital tower, carrying the smell of mildew, rust, and something older buried beneath it all. Nolan stepped from the Humvee, boots splashing through shallow puddles as thunder cracked low over the tree-line. The building stood crooked against the night sky, 11 stories of rotting concrete and blackened glass waiting for demolition at sunrise. No power, no staff, no reason for a distress signal to come from inside. Yet 22 minutes earlier, military dispatch had intercepted an emergency beacon from the hospital's basement level, an old Marine Corps frequency, one that hadn't been active in nearly a decade. Nolan adjusted the rifle strap across his chest and looked toward the entrance again. Rex. His voice stayed calm, controlled, the way men spoke when they did not want fear hearing itself out loud. The German shepherd didn't move. Rain dripped from the animal's ears. His breathing was slow, shallow, wrong. Then came the sound again. 3 faint metallic knocks somewhere deep inside the building. Clang, clang, clang. Not random, rhythmic, like someone hitting an old pipe with a wrench. Nolan's jaw tightened. Behind him, Staff Sergeant Levi Turner killed the Humvee engine and stepped into the rain. Levi was broad-shouldered, blonde, built like a man carved from lumber and old football injuries. You hearing that too? Nolan nodded once. Rex let out a low growl. Not aggressive. Uneasy. The kind that started deep in the chest before danger had a face. Levi glanced at the dog. That's not like him. No, it wasn't. Rex had spent 7 years beside Nolan. Iraq, Afghanistan, 2 embassy evacuations, 1 school bombing in Helmand where the dog dragged a bleeding 12-year-old girl through smoke before the second explosion hit. Rex feared nothing living, which was exactly why Nolan suddenly felt cold despite the rain. Another flash of lightning illuminated the hospital lobby through the cracked entrance doors. Wheelchairs overturned near the reception desk, mold climbing the walls. A faded American flag hanging crooked beside a collapsed security gate. And for half a second, Nolan could have sworn he saw movement near the elevators. Human height, motionless, watching them. The light vanished. Did you see that? Levi asked quietly. Nolan didn't answer immediately. Rex stepped backward again. 1 slow step, then another. His claws scraped the wet pavement. Easy, boy. Nolan crouched slightly, reaching for the dog's harness. The moment his fingers touched the soaked nylon strap, Rex turned sharply and pressed himself against Nolan's chest, physically blocking him from the doorway. Nolan froze. The dog was trembling, not from cold, from recognition. Somewhere above them, a rusted door slammed shut inside the building. Both Marines snapped their heads upward. Silence followed. Thick, heavy. Rainwater dripped from the edge of the awning in uneven taps. Levi lifted his flashlight toward the upper windows. Place is supposed to be empty. Another metallic knock echoed through the structure. Clang, clang, clang. Closer this time. Nolan stared into the dark lobby again. His pulse slowed the way it always did before something bad happened. Military instinct. The world narrowing itself into details. The smell of wet concrete. The flicker of failing red lights inside. Rex's ears pinned back flat against his skull. Then the dog did something Nolan had never seen before in all their years together. Rex whimpered. Soft. Almost broken. Nolan looked down immediately. Rex. The German shepherd kept staring into the hospital, eyes fixed on the elevator hallway, disappearing into darkness. And then, very slowly, The dog lowered himself between Nolan and the entrance, as if trying to shield him from something only he could see. A gust of wind pushed through the shattered doors. Somewhere deep inside the abandoned hospital, a monitor suddenly beeped once. The single monitor beep echoed through the abandoned hospital and then vanished so completely that even the rain outside seemed to stop breathing for a moment. Nolan slowly straightened, every muscle in his body tightening beneath the soaked tactical jacket. Rex remained planted in front of him, shoulders rigid, amber eyes fixed on the dark elevator corridor inside the lobby. Levi stepped closer, lowering his voice instinctively. There should not be power in there. He was right. St. Mercy had been condemned 9 years ago after flood damage rotted most of the lower floors. The backup generators were supposedly stripped long ago. Yet somewhere inside that dead building, something had just responded. Nolan drew a slow breath through his nose. Mold. Vetblechter. Ruscht. Then another scent slipped beneath it all. Smoke. Not fresh. Old. Burned wiring maybe. Or was something else buried deep in the walls. He clicked on his flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness in a pale white line. Dust drifted across the lobby like ash in snowfall. Stay close, Nolan muttered. Rex immediately growled again. Harder this time. The dog shoved against Nolan's leg with enough force to stop his first step across the threshold. Nolan looked down sharply. Rex. The German shepherd's ears flattened completely. Then his gaze shifted toward the reception desk. Not the hallway. Not the elevators. The desk. Levi noticed it too. What is he looking at? Nolan swept the flashlight beam slowly across the overturned chairs and debris. Water stains crawled along the walls in dark veins. Filing cabinets sat half-submerged beneath collapsed ceiling panels. And then the light landed on something strange near the receptionist station. A military flashlight, standing upright on the floor. Turn on. Nolan's stomach tightened instantly. The flashlight beam glowed weak and yellow through the dust, casting long shadows against the desk like fingers reaching across the tile. Somebody had placed it there recently. Batteries did not survive 9 years in an abandoned hospital. Levi whispered, You think we were alone in here? Before Nolan could answer, Rex suddenly moved. Fust. The German shepherd crossed the threshold at last, claws clicking sharply against the wet floor. But instead of advancing deeper into the hospital, he went directly to the flashlight and stopped beside it. Nose twitching, body tense. Nolan followed carefully, rifle lowered but ready. Rainwater dripped from his sleeves onto the cracked tile as he crouched beside the object. The flashlight itself was military issue. Marine Corps standard. Scratched casing. Mud packed into the grooves near the switch. Nolan reached toward it slowly. Rex released a warning growl the instant his fingers got close. Easy, Nolan whispered. But the dog did not calm down. Nolan frowned and angled the flashlight beam lower. Something was wrapped around the handle. A faded red cloth strip, torn and stiff with age. For a second, Nolan simply stared at it. Then recognition hit him like ice water down the spine. No way, he murmured. Levi leaned closer. What? Nolan carefully lifted the cloth with 2 fingers. Sewn into the edge was a tiny black insignia almost erased by time. 3rd Battalion Recon, Nolan's old unit. His pulse slowed dangerously. That cloth was not random fabric. Marines used strips like that during desert operations overseas to identify squad gear at night. Nolan had not seen one since Afghanistan. Rex suddenly backed away from the flashlight entirely. A low whine escaped his throat again. Then came another sound from deeper in the hospital. Footsteps. Slow. Uneven. Somewhere above them on the 2nd floor. Both Marines snapped their flashlights upward. Silence followed immediately after, but not natural silence. The kind where something had heard you listening. Levi raised his rifle now. We got somebody in here. Nolan kept staring at the cloth strip in his hand. His mind was already somewhere else. Kandahar province. 8 years earlier. Smoke rolling across broken concrete. Men screaming through. Static radios. And one Marine who vanished during the extraction before dawn. Daniel Mercer. Another metallic clang echoed through the hospital. Much closer now. Clang, clang, clang. Rex barked suddenly. One sharp, explosive bark that ricocheted through the lobby. Then the German Shepherd spun toward the elevator hallway and froze completely. Nolan followed the dog's line of sight. At first, he saw nothing except darkness swallowing the corridor hole. Then the emergency lights flickered again. Red, black, red. And during that single pulse of crimson light, a silhouette stood motionless at the far end of the hallway. Human, tall, wearing what looked like an old Marine Corps field jacket. The lights died again instantly. When they flickered back 2 seconds later, the hallway was empty. The hallway stood empty again, but the feeling did not leave. It stayed there in the stale air between the flickering lights and the sound of rain tapping faintly against shattered windows 3 floors above them. Nolan kept his flashlight trained on the corridor long after the silhouette disappeared. Beside him, Rex remained frozen, tail low, ears pinned back so tightly they almost vanished against his skull. Levi swallowed hard. Tell me you saw that too. Nolan did not answer immediately. Because he had. Not just the figure, the jacket, the posture, the stillness. Something about it had reached into a locked part of his memory and twisted. Then the emergency radio on Levi's shoulder crackled alive in a burst of static sharp enough to make both men flinch. Captain Hayes respond. Dispatch. Weak signal. Distorted by interference. Nolan grabbed the handset quickly. Hayes here. Static hissed. Then a woman's voice pushed through. Storm front shifted east. Demolition team moved up their schedule. You have 45 minutes before structural charges activate. Nolan looked up sharply toward the ceiling above them. 45 minutes. Levi cursed under his breath. You are kidding me. St. Mercy was scheduled to come down at dawn, but heavy wind conditions apparently changed the timeline. Somewhere beyond the storm, demolition crews were already setting up outside the safety perimeter. And if somebody really was trapped inside this building, they had less than an hour before 11 stories of concrete folded into themselves. Another clang echoed through the corridor. Clang, clang, clang. Closer now. Nolan keyed the radio again. Dispatch. Did the distress signal identify a source? More static. Then, negative. Beacon is moving. The transmission died completely. Levi stared at Nolan. Moving. Rex suddenly lunged forward into the hallway before either man could stop him. Claws scraped tile. The German Shepherd disappeared into the darkness beyond the elevators. Rex. Nolan took off after him instantly. The flashlight beam bounced wildly across, peeling wallpaper and collapsed ceiling panels as he ran deeper into the corridor. Water dripped somewhere overhead in slow hollow taps. The air grew colder with every step. Behind him, Levi followed fast. Nolan, wait. But Nolan already saw the dog ahead, near the old nurse's station at the far end. Rex stood perfectly still beside an overturned wheelchair, staring at the wall. Not growling now. Listening. Nolan approached carefully, breathing harder. What is it, boy? Rex lifted one paw slowly onto the wheelchair seat. Nolan angled the flashlight downward. His chest tightened instantly. A photograph lay there beneath a layer of dust. Old, bent at the corners. Marine Corissue. 3 men standing beside a Humvee overseas under brutal desert sunlight. Nolan recognized himself immediately. Younger, leaner. Beside him stood Levi, and on the far left was Daniel Mercer, smiling faintly with one hand resting on a younger Rex wearing training gear. Levi stared at the photo in disbelief. That was Kandahar. Nolan picked it up carefully. Dry. Completely dry despite the leaking ceiling and moisture everywhere else. Which meant somebody placed it there recently. On the back, written in faded black marker, were 4 words. He never left this place. A deep metallic bang exploded somewhere above them. Not the pipe sound this time. Bigger. Heavy. Dust drifted from the ceiling vents immediately after. Levi looked upward. 2nd floor. Another noise followed. Footsteps again. Slow. Dragging slightly. Nolan's pulse quickened. Rex began backing away from the stairwell entrance nearby, releasing soft, anxious whines deep in his throat. The dog wanted distance. Fussed. Yet the sounds upstairs continued. One step. Pause. Another step, like somebody pacing directly over their heads. Levi tightened his grip on the rifle. We need to clear this now, or get out. Nolan stared at the photo in his hand again. Daniel Mercer had vanished during an extraction mission 8 years earlier after insurgents ambushed their convoy outside Kandahar. No body was ever recovered. Officially dead. Case closed. But somebody inside this hospital knew details no outsider should know. The flashlight near the reception desk. The cloth strip from recon. Now this photo. Why? Another radio burst crackled suddenly through the corridor, but this time it did not come from Levi's shoulder. It came from upstairs. A voice broke through the static for less than 2 seconds. Weak. Male. Barely audible. Nolan, do not let him in. Then silence. Levi's face drained of color. Who was that? Nolan did not answer because Rex already had. The German Shepherd spun sharply toward the stairwell and barked with a fury Nolan had not heard since combat overseas. Then every emergency light in the hallway went black at once. Darkness swallowed the hallway so completely that Nolan could hear his own breathing before he could see his own hands. Somewhere water dripped steadily through broken pipes above them. Somewhere else old metal creaked inside the walls like the building itself was shifting in its sleep. Then Rex pressed hard against Nolan's leg. Not fear this time. Urgency. Levi clicked on a backup flashlight, the narrow beam shaking slightly across the corridor. Dust floated through the light like smoke underwater. We are done here, Levi said quietly. We call demolition. We get out before this place comes down. Nolan did not answer. The radio voice still echoed inside his head. Nolan, do not let him in. Not help me. Not come upstairs. Do not let him in. Rex suddenly turned toward the stairwell again and released another low warning growl. The sound rolled deep through the darkness. Levi looked at the dog, then back at Nolan. He is trying to tell us something. I know. No, I mean really tell us something. Nolan stared at the black stairwell entrance 20 feet ahead. Rainwater had leaked beneath the fire door, forming thin streams across the cracked tile floor. Above them, somewhere on the second level, a faint scraping noise dragged slowly across concrete, then stopped. Nolan's pulse tightened again. 40 minutes left until demolition. Maybe less. If someone was trapped inside, leaving meant abandoning them. But staying meant risking Rex, Levi, and himself for a voice that might not even be real. The conflict sat heavy in his chest because Marines were trained to move toward danger, not away from it. Yet every instinct in Rex screamed the opposite. Nolan crouched slowly beside the dog. Talk to me, boy. Rex looked at him immediately, amber eyes reflecting the weak flashlight glow. Then the dog did something strange. He nudged Nolan's chest pocket with his nose. Once. Twice. Nolan frowned and reached inside. His fingers brushed cold metal. The old military dog tag he always carried. Daniel Mercer's tag. Nolan had kept it for 8 years after the failed extraction in Kandahar. Official protocol said personal effects should have been archived, but Nolan never turned this one in. Guilt had a way of making people hold on to ghosts. Levi noticed the tag in Nolan's hand. You still carry that? Nolan rubbed his thumb across the scratched surface. I should have gone back for him. You would have died. Maybe. Rex whined softly. Then the German Shepherd stepped backward from Nolan altogether, one slow step at a time, as if creating distance between Nolan and the stairwell. Levi's face hardened. You see what he is doing? Nolan looked up. He thinks I should leave. Maybe he is right. The words hung there heavier than either man expected, because leaving meant admitting failure. Again, Nolan stared into the darkness above the stairs. 8 years ago, he had chosen evacuation over searching for Mercer after insurgents closed in around the convoy. It was the correct tactical decision. Every report said so, but some decisions stayed alive long after the battlefield ended. Suddenly, a loud mechanical hum rumbled through the building. Both Marines snapped their heads upward. Emergency lights flickered dim red again for half a second before dying once more. Then came a voice over the hospital intercom system. Distorted, weak, but unmistakably human. Basement access, restricted, static swallowed the rest. Levi cursed under his breath. How is any of this even powered? Another sound interrupted him. A child crying. Faint. Somewhere below them. Nolan froze instantly. Rex did not move at all. The crying came again. Thin, trembling, echoing upward through the vent shafts. Levi's eyes widened. There is somebody down there. But Rex suddenly barked sharply. Once. Violently. The dog moved directly in front of the stairwell leading downstairs and blocked it completely. Nolan stared at him in disbelief. You heard that? Rex growled. Every hair along his spine lifted slowly. Levi lowered his flashlight toward the floor between them. Fresh footprints crossed the dust there now. Small ones. Barefoot. Vet. Neither Marine had noticed them before. The tracks led out from the basement stairwell, then stopped abruptly halfway across the corridor as if whoever made them simply vanished into the air. Silence flooded the hallway again. Even the storm outside seemed farther away now. Levi whispered, Nolan, there's something wrong in this place. But Nolan could not stop staring at the footprints, because beside the final print sat something else barely visible in the dark. A yellow hospital wristband. Fresh, not dusty. Imprinted clearly across the plastic in faded black letters was one name. Daniel Mercer. The yellow wristband trembled slightly in Nolan's fingers as cold air drifted through the dark corridor. Daniel Mercer. The printed letters looked fresh enough to have come from a hospital intake desk that morning, not from a condemned building waiting to collapse into dust. Rex stared at the band without blinking. The German shepherd's breathing had changed again. Faster now, uneven, like every instinct inside him was fighting between recognition and fear. Levi swept the flashlight slowly across the corridor one more time. This is impossible, he muttered. Mercer died 8 years ago. Nolan did not answer because part of him no longer believed that. He remembered the extraction too clearly now. The burning convoy outside Kandahar. Radio chatter cutting in and out beneath mortar smoke. Mercer staying behind to guide civilians through the market alley while the evacuation trucks pulled out before dawn. Nolan had followed orders that day, but orders had never silenced guilt. Another faint cry drifted upward through the vents. The child again, weaker this time. Then came a coughing fit somewhere below the floorboards. Human. Real. Levi looked immediately toward the basement stairwell. We cannot ignore that. Rex moved in front of the stairs again, so fast his claws scraped sparks from the concrete. A deep growl rolled from his chest, not warning them away from danger now, warning them about something specific. Nolan crouched beside the dog, slowly. What is down there? Rex looked directly into his eyes for one brief second, then toward the darkness below, then back to Nolan again. The meaning landed cold in Nolan's stomach. Someone was there. Someone Rex recognized. A loud crack echoed somewhere high above them. Dust rained lightly from the ceiling vents. Levi checked his watch. 31 minutes. The demolition clock suddenly felt much louder than the storm outside. Nolan closed his fist around Mercer's wristband. If a child really was trapped below ground, every minute mattered now. But if Rex was this terrified of the basement, forcing the dog down there might mean ignoring the one instinct that had saved Nolan's life more times than he could count. The conflict cut deeper than tactics. Rex was not just military equipment. He was family. Nolan rose slowly. We go halfway. Slow. We verify the voice and get out. Levi nodded once. Rex did not move. Nolan stepped toward the stairwell. The German shepherd backed away from him immediately, whining low in his throat. It was the first time in 7 years Rex had ever refused to follow him into danger. Nolan felt that harder than he expected. Come on, boy. Rex stayed frozen. Rain thundered against the upper windows above. Somewhere deeper in the hospital, a metal door slammed shut with enough force to shake the hallway. Then all at once the emergency lights flickered alive again. Dim red flooded the corridor in pulsing waves. And there on the wall beside the basement stairs, hidden behind years of grime, words suddenly became visible in faded black paint. Do not open Ward C. Levi lifted the flashlight higher. Ward C. Nolan stared at the old hospital map, bolted beside the door. Basement level. Psychiatric isolation wing. Closed after hurricane flooding 9 years earlier. Then his pulse stopped cold. Under the printed evacuation diagram sat a handwritten note scratched directly into the metal with something sharp. He stayed to protect them. Nolan's throat tightened instantly. Mercer. Another cough echoed below them. Much closer now. Then came a child's voice. Barely audible. Please. Levi moved first this time. That is real. He started toward the stairs. Rex barked violently and lunged in front of him, physically blocking the path. Levi stumbled backward in shock. What the hell? Nolan grabbed the dog's harness quickly. Rex was trembling hard now. Not aggressive. Desperate. The kind of desperation Nolan had only seen once before during a mortar attack overseas when Rex refused to enter a schoolyard moments before hidden explosives detonated nearby. The memory hit him all at once. Rex had sensed danger before technology did. Before humans did. Before reason did. Levi looked down into the darkness below the stairwell. Then why is there a kid calling for help? No one answered. Because none of it made sense. Not the wristband. Not the footsteps. Not the moving distress beacon. And not the fact that every time the child's voice echoed upward, Rex reacted with deeper fear instead of urgency. Then the hospital intercom crackled alive again overhead. Static screamed through the speakers for several seconds before a broken male voice whispered one sentence that turned the blood cold in Nolan's veins. If Rex will not go down there, neither should you. Silence followed. Total. Heavy. Then, from somewhere deep beneath the basement stairs, a child began softly singing in Old Marine Corps marching cadence. The child's voice drifted upward through the darkness below them, soft and uneven, singing the Old Marine cadence almost like a lullaby remembered from far away. Nolan felt the hairs rise along the back of his neck because he knew that song. Mercer used to hum it during overnight patrols overseas whenever the younger Marines got nervous before dawn operations. Rex began pacing now in tight, frantic circles near the stairwell, claws clicking sharply against the concrete. The dog was no longer trying to attack the darkness. He was trying to stop Nolan from stepping into it. Levi leaned closer to the stairwell, flashlight beam trembling over rusted railings, disappearing into blackness. That kid could be alive down there. Nolan swallowed hard. Or somebody wants us to think that. Another crack thundered through the building overhead. Dust rained from the ceiling again. Somewhere outside, demolition sirens wailed faintly through the storm. 23 minutes left. Then suddenly the child's singing stopped. Silence followed for 3 long seconds. And then a man's voice echoed upward from the basement. Weak. Exhausted. Nolan. Every muscle in Nolan's body locked. He knew that voice. Older now. Damaged by time and pain. But unmistakable. Daniel Mercer. Levi stared at him in disbelief. No way. The voice came again. Do not come down here. Rex barked furiously at the sound. Not toward the basement itself this time. Toward Nolan. As if the warning was not about danger below, but about what hearing Mercer might do to him. Nolan stepped slowly toward the stairs despite the dog's protests. Mercer. Static hissed somewhere below. Then a cough. Deep. Ragged. You should have left this place buried. Nolan gripped the railing tighter. 8 years of guilt surged through him all at once. We thought you were dead. A bitter laugh floated upward through the darkness. That is what they wanted. Levi exchanged a confused glance with Nolan. Who wanted? Silence. Then the emergency lights flickered dim red again, just enough to reveal something horrifying halfway down the stairwell wall. Dozens of names scratched into the paint. Marines. Dates. Unit numbers. Some crossed out. Some circled repeatedly. Nolan stepped lower slowly, flashlight beam shaking now. Rex whimpered behind him, but would not follow. At the bottom of the list sat one final message carved deep enough to expose bare concrete beneath. They left U.S. here after the flood. Levi breathed. What the hell happened in this hospital? The answer came from below. They used Ward C after Kandahar. Mercer's voice sounded weaker now. Off-record treatment. Psychological evaluations. Experimental trauma isolation. Nolan frowned. For veterans? For Marines who knew too much. A cold heaviness settled into the stairwell. Nolan suddenly remembered rumors after the convoy disaster. Reports sealed above classification level. Survivors reassigned without explanation. Men returning different. Some disappearing entirely. Rex released another desperate bark behind him. Then finally the dog did something that froze Nolan completely. Rex turned away from the basement and looked directly toward the hospital entrance upstairs. Toward escape. Toward the outside world. The dog was begging him to leave. Not because Mercer was dangerous. Because Mercer was telling the truth. Nolan descended another step anyway. "Mercer, where are you?" A long pause followed. Then, room C12. Another cough rattled through the darkness. "Do not bring Rex." Nolan stopped cold. Levi looked at him sharply. How does he know the dog is here? Then came the twist that shattered the entire night open. Mercer answered quietly. "Because Rex remembers me." Silence swallowed the stairwell. Nolan stared upward toward the German shepherd, standing rigid in the red emergency glow. Memories suddenly rearranged themselves inside his mind. Not just a photo, not just a reaction tonight. Afghanistan, Kandahar. Before Rex became Nolan's partner, he belonged to Mercer. The realization landed like thunder in Nolan's chest. Mercer had trained Rex from a puppy. Mercer taught him combat tracking, taught him explosive detection, taught him every command Nolan later inherited after Mercer vanished. Which meant Rex had recognized Mercer's scent the moment they entered the hospital. Not fear of the building, not fear of danger, fear of finding someone he thought was gone forever. Nolan looked back into the darkness below. "Mercer," his voice cracked slightly for the first time all night. "Why are you hiding?" For several seconds, nothing answered except distant thunder outside. Then Mercer whispered words that made Levi step backward in shock. "Because I was never the one they were trying to keep inside this hospital." The lights overhead suddenly flashed bright red. Somewhere below them, a steel security door groaned open by itself. And for the first time all night, Rex began howling. The sound of Rex howling rolled through the stairwell like grief finally finding a voice after years of silence. Nolan had heard that sound only once before. Kandahar. Dawn smoke. Burning vehicles beneath a blood-orange sky. Rex had howled exactly like that after Mercer disappeared into the collapsing alley during the evacuation. Not fear. Not rage. Loss. Levi slowly lowered his flashlight, stunned. He knew all this time. Nolan could barely breathe around the weight pressing into his chest. Every strange reaction tonight suddenly rearranged itself into something heartbreaking. Rex was never warning them away from a threat. He was trying to stop Nolan from reopening an old wound neither of them survived cleanly. Another rumble shook the hospital foundation beneath their boots. Concrete dust drifted down the stairwell walls in pale streams. Somewhere outside, demolition sirens wailed louder through the storm. 15 minutes, maybe less. Yet Nolan could not move. Because for the first time in 8 years, Mercer was alive somewhere below him, breathing the same cold air. And Rex had carried that memory alone the entire time. The German shepherd slowly descended 2 steps toward Nolan now. Carefully, hesitantly. His amber eyes never left the darkness below. Nolan crouched instinctively and placed one trembling hand against the side of Rex's neck. The fur was soaked and cold beneath his fingers. Rex leaned into the touch immediately, but there was pain in the dog's posture now. Deep pain. The kind old soldiers carried quietly because they did not know what else to do with. Nolan swallowed hard. "You thought he died too, did you not?" Rex lowered his head slightly. A soft whine escaped him. Levi looked away for a moment, giving him silence. Because even he understood this was no longer just a mission inside an abandoned hospital. It was unfinished grief standing in the dark, asking to be seen. Then Mercer's voice drifted upward again through the basement corridor. Fainter now. Nolan stood instantly. "Where are you?" Static crackled somewhere below. Then came the sound of a heavy lock clicking open. Ward C. Mercer coughed hard. Room 12. Another violent shudder rolled through the building. This time the emergency lights dimmed almost completely before sputtering back red again. Levi checked his watch and cursed softly. 13 minutes. Nolan stared into the darkness below the stairs. Rex immediately stepped in front of him again. Not aggressive. Pleading. The conflict in the dog's eyes was almost human now. Part of him wanted Nolan to go to Mercer. Another part wanted to protect him from whatever truth waited below. Nolan knelt in front of Rex once more. Listen to me. His voice broke slightly. If he is alive, I cannot leave him here. Rex stared back at him silently. Then the dog did something that nearly shattered Nolan completely. Slowly, carefully, Rex lifted one paw and placed it against Nolan's chest exactly where Mercer's old dog tag rested inside his pocket. Nolan closed his eyes briefly. Because he finally understood. Rex was not trying to stop him from saving Mercer. He was trying to stop him from carrying guilt that was never his to bear. Tears burned unexpectedly behind Nolan's eyes. He had spent 8 years believing he abandoned a brother. 8 years replaying that evacuation order every night in his head, wondering if courage would have meant staying behind. But Rex had known something Nolan did not. Mercer survived, which meant the thing haunting Nolan all these years was not failure. It was uncertainty. A loud metallic screech suddenly echoed from below them. The security door in the basement was opening wider, now under failing emergency power. Cold air drifted upward, carrying a smell that did not belong in an abandoned hospital. Antiseptic. Fresh. Levi noticed it too. Somebody has been using this place recently. Then another voice floated upward from below. Not Mercer this time. Calm. Female. Captain Hayes. Nolan froze. Levi's flashlight jerked toward the darkness. Who was that? Silence followed for 2 long seconds. Then the woman spoke again. If you want Daniel Mercer alive, you must come alone. Rex erupted into furious barking instantly. Every hair along his spine rose. The dog shoved himself between Nolan and the basement stairs with desperate force. Nolan grabbed the harness, heart pounding hard now. Who are you? The woman ignored the question completely. The demolition charges will breach Ward C first. 7 minutes. Levi stared at Nolan in disbelief. How does she know the timing? No answer came. Only static humming through hidden speakers somewhere below. Then Mercer's exhausted voice returned one last time, barely above a whisper. Rex was never trying to protect you from this building, Nolan. A long pause followed, the kind that made the silence itself feel dangerous. He was trying to protect you for what they kept alive inside it. The basement air felt colder than winter the moment Nolan crossed the final stair. Not natural cold. Hospital cold. The kind that carried the scent of bleach, old metal, and sleepless nights buried beneath fluorescent lights. Rex stayed pressed against Nolan's leg now, every muscle in the German Shepherd tight with unease as they entered Ward C together. Levi followed close behind, flashlights sweeping across peeling walls covered in water stains that looked almost like reaching hands in the red emergency glow. Somewhere pipes rattled overhead. Somewhere concrete groaned under the weight of the dying building. 7 minutes. The corridor stretched long and narrow ahead of them, lined with thick isolation doors reinforced by old military locks. Most stood open now. Empty rooms beyond them. Rusted beds. Torn restraints hanging loose from frames. Nolan's chest tightened as he noticed names scratched into nearly every doorway. Marines. Dates. Unit numbers. Forgotten men hidden underground. After the war stopped making headlines. Then Rex froze beside room C-12. The German Shepherd's ears lifted slightly for the first time all night. Not fear now. Recognition. Nolan slowly pushed the half-open door inward. The room beyond was dim, except for one battery lantern glowing weakly on the floor beside a hospital bed. And sitting there wrapped in an old gray blanket was Daniel Mercer. Older. Gaunt. Beard streaked with gray. His shoulders thinner than Nolan remembered, but the eyes were the same. Calm blue eyes carrying too many winters inside them. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Rain hammered faintly above the ceiling far overhead while the emergency lights flickered red across Mercer's face. Then Rex moved, slowly at first. One cautious step, then another. Mercer's expression cracked apart completely the moment the dog reached him. "Hey, buddy," he whispered. His voice trembled harder than the building around them. Rex pressed his head against Mercer's chest immediately and released a soft, broken sound deep in his throat. Not a bark, not a growl. Relief, pure and painful. Mercer buried one shaking hand into the thick fur around Rex's neck and closed his eyes. Nolan looked away briefly because some reunions hurt too much to watch directly. 8 years disappeared in that room without a single dramatic word spoken. Just a tired Marine and an aging dog finding each other again in the dark. Levi finally broke the silence. "Who kept you down here?" Mercer opened his eyes slowly. "Nobody kept me." Nolan frowned. "What?" Mercer stroked Rex's ears absently, like muscle memory from another lifetime. "After Kandahar, they brought several of us here. Men with combat trauma. Men who saw things command wanted buried." His breathing grew uneven for a moment. Ward C was never treatment. It was containment. Nolan stared around the room. The reinforced doors. The hidden wing beneath the hospital. The forgotten names. Suddenly, every rumor after the war felt less like paranoia. Mercer looked back at Nolan quietly. Some of the men broke. Some disappeared into themselves. I stayed because somebody had to make sure they were not abandoned. Levi shook his head in disbelief. For 8 years. Mercer nodded once. The flood sealed most of the lower tunnels. After the hospital closed, people forgot this wing existed. Another violent tremor rolled through the ceiling above them. Dust scattered across the floor. Somewhere, metal beams screamed under pressure. Levi checked his watch. For minutes. Mercer looked down at Rex again, sadness softening his tired face. "I sent the distress signal tonight because demolition would have buried this place forever." Nolan glanced around the room sharply. "Then where are the others?" Silence answered first. Heavy silence. Then Mercer spoke very softly. "Gone." The words settled over the room like ash. Some transferred. Some lost to time. Some simply stopped speaking until the world forgot they were alive. Mercer exhaled slowly. "I stayed because leaving felt like abandoning them again." Rex lifted his head and stared at Mercer with those old amber eyes that seemed to understand grief better than language ever could. Nolan felt something break quietly inside his chest then. Not fear, not anger. The guilt he carried for 8 years finally had somewhere to rest. Mercer had survived, and Rex knew it long before any human did. Suddenly, the overhead speakers crackled alive once more. The female voice returned calm as ever. "Captain Hayes, structural failure has begun." Levi spun toward the hallway. "Who are you?" Static hissed briefly. Then the woman answered with something that froze all 3 men completely. "I was the nurse who stayed behind with them after the flood." Silence swallowed the room again. Nolan stepped toward the intercom speaker slowly. "Where are you now?" "No." Answer came immediately. Only the distant sound of old ventilation fans turning somewhere deep beneath the hospital. Then the woman whispered one final sentence before the speakers died forever. "Some promises are louder than death." At that exact moment, every emergency light in Ward C suddenly went dark. Darkness crashed over Ward C all at once. The lantern beside Mercer flickered weakly for half a second before dying too, leaving only the distant rumble of thunder somewhere above the collapsing hospital. Then came the sound every man in the room understood immediately. The low mechanical groan of structural charges beginning to detonate floor by floor above them. Dust burst from the ceiling vents. Concrete cracked sharply somewhere down the corridor. Levi snapped on his flashlight again. "We move now." Nolan grabbed Mercer beneath the arm without hesitation. The older Marine tried to stand, but nearly collapsed from weakness after years underground. Rex immediately pressed himself against Mercer's side, steadying him with instinctive loyalty like no time had passed at all. Another violent tremor rolled through Ward C. Ceiling tiles shattered across the hallway outside. Emergency pipes burst somewhere nearby, spraying freezing water against the walls in silver streams. Levi shouted over the noise. Service tunnel. There has to be another exit. Mercer nodded weakly toward the far corridor. North maintenance shaft. They moved fast through the failing hallway together. Nolan supporting Mercer on one side. Rex refusing to leave the older Marine's leg for even a second. The German Shepherd kept looking up at Mercer constantly, as if terrified he might disappear again if he broke eye contact. The sight hit Nolan harder than he expected. 8 years. 8 years Rex carried that loss silently beside him, while Nolan thought the dog had simply adapted to a new handler. But dogs did not forget the people who shaped their hearts. They just waited quietly with the pain. Another explosion boomed somewhere above them. The lights overhead burst in sparks. Cracks spread across the corridor walls like lightning trapped inside concrete. Levi swept his flashlight ahead through the smoke and dust. There, a steel maintenance door half buried beneath debris. Nolan shoved against it hard. The hinges screamed, but finally gave way. Cold rain air rushed inward through the narrow tunnel beyond. Salvation. Almost. Then Mercer stopped moving. Nolan looked back immediately. What is wrong? Mercer's face had gone pale beneath the dust and exhaustion. His eyes drifted toward the dark hallway behind them. There were 6 others in Ward C when the flood came. Nolan tightened his grip on him. Mercer, we do not have time. But Mercer barely seemed to hear him now. I promised I would not leave them alone. His voice broke quietly. Not again. Rex whimpered immediately and pressed closer against Mercer's chest. Nolan felt his own throat tighten because suddenly he understood the true reason Mercer never escaped this place. It was not fear, not imprisonment, guilt, the same thing that haunted soldiers long after wars ended. Mercer survived while others did not. So he buried himself beside their memory underground where nobody could ask him to move forward. Another massive tremor ripped through the building. Part of the ceiling collapsed farther down the hall in a roar of dust and concrete. Levi grabbed Nolan's shoulder hard. Now, Nolan looked at Mercer one last time. You carried this long enough. Mercer stared down at Rex beside him. Tears mixed silently with the grime on his face as he rested one trembling hand against the dog's head. He stayed loyal to both of us. Nolan nodded slowly, because that is what good souls do. Together, they forced their way through the maintenance shaft just as another shockwave tore through Ward C behind them. The tunnel opened into the storm drainage canal nearly 200 yards behind the hospital grounds. Cold rain hammered the earth outside. Fresh air rushed into Nolan's lungs as they stumbled into the night mud beneath flashing emergency lights from the distant demolition crews. Behind them, St. Mercy Veterans Hospital groaned one final time. Then the upper floors folded inward through clouds of smoke and rain, disappearing into themselves with a sound like the earth exhaling grief it had carried too long. Paramedics rushed toward them across the field. Voices shouted. Flashlights cut through the storm. But Nolan barely heard any of it because Rex suddenly stopped walking. The German Shepherd turned slowly back toward the collapsing ruins. Ears lifted, listening. Mercer noticed it too. What is it, buddy? Rex stood completely still in the rain. Then, through the distant thunder and sirens, a faint sound drifted from the wreckage one last time. A woman humming softly. The same old Marine cadence from below Ward C. Nolan looked toward the ruins sharply. But there was nothing left standing now except broken concrete disappearing beneath rain and smoke. One of the paramedics approached Mercer carefully. Sir, how long were you inside there? Mercer looked at the ruins without answering for several seconds. Then he whispered something so quietly Nolan almost missed it. Long enough for Ghost to start feeling human. Weeks later, after the investigations and reports and questions nobody could fully answer, Nolan drove north along the Virginia coast beneath a pale winter sunrise. Rex rested quietly in the passenger seat beside him, while Mercer followed behind in another truck headed toward a rehabilitation center near Annapolis. The road stretched silent beneath bare trees dusted with frost. For the first time in years, Nolan no longer felt that old guilt clawing at his chest. But some nights still stayed with him. The flickering red lights, the names carved into concrete, the voice on the intercom, and one question he could never quite silence. When the lights went out beneath Ward C, who turned the final door lock open for them? Rex suddenly lifted his head from the passenger seat and looked toward the empty road ahead. His ears twitched once. Then the old German shepherd gave a slow, calm wag of his tail at something Nolan could not see. On a storm-filled night inside an abandoned military hospital scheduled for demolition, a former Marine and his loyal German shepherd uncover a buried truth connected to a missing soldier, forgotten veterans, and a hidden underground ward erased from official history. As strange signals echo through dark hallways and old memories return, the bond between the Marine and his K-9 companion is tested by guilt, loyalty, and a promise that survived for 8 years beneath the ruins. This emotional, cinematic journey blends suspense, heartbreak, mystery, and redemption in one of the most unforgettable animal stories you will ever hear. From eerie hospital corridors to emotional reunions in the rain, this story explores how dogs remember the people they love long after the world believes they are gone. Fans of heartfelt animal stories, military drama, German shepherd rescue tales, emotional K-9 journeys, and inspirational animal stories will be drawn into a haunting narrative about sacrifice, trauma, and the quiet miracles that sometimes walk beside us on 4 paws. With powerful atmosphere, emotional storytelling, and deep human connection, this is one of those rare animal stories that stays in your heart long after the final scene fades. If you love emotional rescue dramas, mysterious military secrets, and deeply moving animal stories filled with faith, loyalty, and healing, this unforgettable journey between a Marine and his German shepherd will leave you thinking about the unseen bonds that never truly die.